evening. Thanks for coming. I'm Camilla Brendon. I'm an artist that works with found and recycled materials, and I look at inland waterways and oceans. I'm creating a workshop called Humans Make Plastic, and the latest series of it is part of Totally Thames 2020, and I'm carrying out the workshop with the Lower Regents Coalition. So Humans Make Plastic is a series of workshops that I started in 2018. And participants of the workshops collect plastics from blue spaces like canal towpaths, beaches, and also they use single-use plastics from around the home to make recycled art. So I like a wide audience to participate in the workshops, and I encourage conversation around consumption and disposal of waste as participants experiment with making. The focus of the workshop is to network, think about necessary and systematic lifestyle changes, and to improve the health of our planet, and to think about how our daily actions are connected to waterways and the oceans, and to try something new in creating intriguing and free art. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Totally Thames Festival, which is held each year in September. All right, so now for the panel. I've brought together a group of people from different backgrounds, including education, environmental conservation, and marine science. And I've worked with all of you on various projects over the last 3 years. Okay, so let me introduce everyone. So first, I'd like to introduce Molly, who's the co-chair of the Lower Regents Coalition, a volunteer group that maintains the Regents Canal in London and is helping to run Humans Make Plastic with me this year. Britt works for the European Marine Board in Belgium, a think tank advising on ocean science and policy. Simon is the chief executive of the Floating Classroom, an educational charity who runs school trips on the London Canal system. Jemima is completing her master's in marine conservation at Plymouth University, and Oliver runs Sail Britain, an interdisciplinary project which inspires positive change for the ocean. So everyone's actually answered a written interview, and all of those are going to be available, are available now on my website. So I'm going to ask a question to each panel member, then they'll have a couple of minutes to answer. Okay, great. So I'm going to go through the questions in the order I introduced you all. So Molly, you work at a grassroots level with local volunteers. How do you feel the work you do in the community helps volunteers engage with blue spaces and the importance of keeping them clean? And do you notice any impact from plastics or other litter in the canal you look after?
Okay, well, thank you for having me, Camilla. I'm really excited about this project and to work with you on it. So yeah, I co-run a local volunteer group in Tower Hamlets, along with Dave, who we sort of started very informally by doing small towpath litter picks along the Regents Canal in Tower Hamlets. And over time, our group has grown larger and larger as more and more people heard about what we were doing. They wanted to get involved. And we've been running about 7 years now. We still do regular litter picks, but since then we've been able to secure several grants to do larger projects to improve the canal. So one thing that we've done is install a series of floating vegetated planters in the canal to try to add more green infrastructure in the water itself. It adds habitat for wildlife. It softens some of the hard surfaces that, like the canal walls. So it has a lot of different benefits. We've also created 2 150-meter squared wildflower meadows on either side of the canal, again, adding habitat to the area and bringing lots of benefits there. So lots of different things. I think the way that our efforts help people connect to the blue spaces in the area is just to kind of interact with those spaces in a different way than they might have if they're just traversing up and down the canal towpath, which lots of people do every day. And when you're sort of on your way from point A to point B, you might not really stop and really take a close look at what's around you. And when you participate in one of our litter picks, we've heard so many people say over and over again, that they never realized A, how much litter there was in and around the canal, and B, sort of how much wildlife and habitat there is. You know, they start to notice things that they really didn't notice before. And that can change behavior in a number of ways. People tell others about their experiences with our group. They bring others along. They learn about things like how all the waterway systems are connected. So how our little stretch of the Regents is part of a much larger system. And of course, our stretch of the Regents ends in Limehouse Basin, in which the lock at the bottom of the basin spills out directly into the Thames. So our stretch of waterway is very closely connected to the Thames, and people learn about how, you know, the Thames, you know, flows out to the estuary and to the sea, and so that everything is connected. And so the health of one little patch of waterway impacts the overall health of the system. And so people kind of, you know, the light bulb goes off, and they realize that they can make a big difference even just working on their little stretch. So just really quickly, one of the impacts of plastic in our stretch. So we've been running these monthly litter picks for about 7 years now. And one thing that we've noticed is the way, you know, that there are hot spots of litter. So there are certain places, you know, because of the flow of the canal and whatever, where mostly plastic pollution tends to accumulate. And when we go back and clear out those hot spots again and again, we see that habitat flourishes because we've just removed all the plastic impeding the growth of things like yellow flag iris and Phragmites reeds and stuff like that. So in addition to the floating infrastructures that we put in ourselves, we see a lot more habitat occurring naturally along the canal, and that just brings more wildlife to the area as well.
So Britt, you work on promoting the uptake of ocean science in policy making. Can you tell us a bit more about the relationship between humans and the ocean, and how the people of London are connected to the ocean?
Yeah, thanks very much, Camilla. And yeah, I'm very happy to see humans make plastic as part of the Totally Thames Festival this year. So humans and the ocean are connected in many, many ways. And the ocean is the life support system for all life on Earth. So without it, we wouldn't be here. And there's many different types of plants and algae in the ocean that produce oxygen and store carbon, just like trees and plants do on land. And the ocean also controls our climate and weather and provides us with many other things, including food and medicine, and also other things that are used in biomedical research. And interestingly, the enzyme that's used in the COVID-19 test actually was first discovered in deep sea hydrothermal vents. And we also get minerals and energy from the ocean, and we transport our goods all around the world on the sea. There's many jobs that are supported by the ocean, and there's also a lot of mental health and well-being benefits, as well as recreation. And it's also an important part of the cultural heritage in many areas of the world. So it's really important that we have a healthy ocean so that it can continue to support us in all of these ways, and also to support other life on Earth. But there are many activities that we do as humans that can be harmful to the ocean, like pollution and climate change, and also overfishing. So this workshop's all about plastics. So I'll talk a little bit about those. And that's just one way that Londoners are connected to the ocean, but it's also important to think about all these other connections that might not be so obvious. So it's important to think about how your carbon footprint impacts the ocean, and also simple actions like choosing to ride your bike rather than driving. So all of these things will have an impact on the ocean. And London, as you all know, is a very big city. And the Thames then runs into the North Sea, and then that's connected to the ocean. So as Molly said, all of these systems are connected. There's a lot of pollution that comes from London that's taken out to sea. And this includes plastics, but also other types of chemicals from household products, cleaning products, or personal care products, or chemicals used in agriculture, things like that. So plastic gets broken down into smaller pieces, and then harmful chemicals can attach onto the surface of the plastics, and then there are many marine organisms that will mistake the plastic for food, so then they'll ingest it along with the chemicals. So that's quite problematic, and it causes harm in these organisms and also the ecosystems, and it's also getting into our seafood. And so we don't really know that much about the human health impacts of that yet. And we're also beginning to understand now how widespread plastic pollution is. And just before this call, I was reading up a little bit. It seems that wherever that we look for plastics, they're found, more or less. So even in very remote areas of the planet, so they're found in deep sea sediments and also in the ice in the Arctic. So it's not just that just goes to show also this connection between things that happen in London, like a piece of your plastic bottle could end up in the deep sea. So and then but the good news is that there are things you can do to help. So I think we'll talk about that a bit later, and you guys will probably talk about that as well. But yeah, so reducing the amount of plastic that you use, reusing it as well, and recycling, and also going on cleans in your local areas, like the ones that Molly organised, all can have an impact and help in a positive way.
Thanks, Britt. Simon, you work with educating mainly primary school age children through school trips on the London Canal system. How do you think children benefit from seeing local blue spaces?
In loads of different ways. I think first of all, there's almost a rarity value to it. A lot of the children that we work with live in North Westminster and North Kensington, and North Westminster in particular. The access to green spaces and blue spaces is really limited for families living there, and what green space there is tends to not be publicly available. I think there's also issues around the lack of confidence amongst parents and amongst families about exploring their neighbourhoods. For a lot of them, they might be relatively new to the area, and there's a definite sense that that most of their activities are confined to the kind of neighbourhoods, the estates where they live. And so I think that's one of the things the floating classroom is able to do, is to take children, sometimes family groups, and sometimes the children encourage their parents to go afterwards alongside with them, and it does sort of open it up for them. In terms of the actual kind of the actual benefits of it, I think there's 4 or 5 I kind of picked out when I was thinking about it. I think the first one is the one that's been touched on with Britt and Molly, which is about actually giving children first-hand exposure to the ecology of their local area. They see the birds that live there, they see the plants that grow there. And there's actually something just actually quite thrilling for children to be out on the water on a boat as they go around the island at Little Venice, and they see the Canada geese, the swans, the Egyptian geese, And I think it's very easy to overlook just how resonant that is. But there is definitely something that's very, very exciting about seeing them at first hand. I think also there's something about the way that it teaches them about the heritage of the local area as well. Knowing why and when those canals were built in the first place. And then bringing that up to date for them as well, that they were built as trading channels. They were built to move things from one place to another. And it's interesting to sort of go through the history of that, but also to bring it right up to date as well. The regeneration of most major cities over the last 20, 30 years has probably been driven by the proximity to water. And it's quite interesting for children to come along and see a place like Paddington Central, a great big huge office development by the side of us. And on the one hand, I'm uncomfortable with some elements of that and what they've done in terms of kind of gentrifying the canals. But also there's a certain aspirational quality to it, and there's something that's quite interesting for the kids to see, that there's these big places like Microsoft that are based sort of 2 minutes away from where they live. And also I think it just helps to kind of situate them in the story of the local area as well. Those canals were built 200 plus years ago, and here they are still in use, still thriving. And it's great for them to sort of feel it's part of their story as well. I think also the canals are a great place just as a resource, just in terms of being able to bring quite abstract topics to life. So for instance, if you're trying to explain water forces to a child in a classroom, I think that's quite a stretch. Whereas if you're sat on a boat or stood on the deck of a boat whilst you go into the lock at Camden and go up and down that lock, it's far easier to wrap your head around that as a concept. And similarly with something like adaptation, to be able to sit there again with kids and say, okay, why has the heron got feet like that? And why has a duck got feet like that? And to explore it with them. And with our boat, when they get a chance to actually wear those birds' feet as well, with our model birds' feet, and walk in their shoes, I think it's a great way of bringing those kind of topics to life for the kids. I think also, and this is something, Britt, you particularly touched on, I think really is about, it's a chance to see the actual, very tangibly, to see the impacts of human behaviour on those spaces as well. I was just walking through Little Venice the other day, and there's a bubble barrier at the top of Little Venice where all the duckweed stops, and it's pretty amazing to see. I don't know, there's something about seeing all the plastics atop a bright green duckweed compared to normal, but it's a really, really vivid illustration of just how much rubbish gets tossed and fetches up in the water. And I think for the children to see that's very shocking. And it also, in terms of our boat, just to be able to see the carrier bags that are, carpeting the bottom of the canals. And you'll know this, Camilla, how often we have to stop to get stuff off the propeller. And that, again, seeing the kids' kind of faces horror struck when they see the amount of plastic carrier bags or mattresses or rope that are wrapped around the prop. And then I think the final benefit that sort of occurred to me when I was thinking about this earlier is around the sort of de-stressing and calming nature of the environment. And that's something that's really struck me over the last few years. We've done far more interviews with pupils as part of the post-project evaluations. And it's really, really struck me how completely comfortable and confident 8 and 9 year olds are with the language of stress, and equally able to talk about it in opposition, if you like, that when they come on the boat, they almost automatically forget their worries, they relax, they calm down. And I think that's a benefit. It's hard to quantify, but certainly I'm seeing that come through time and time again in terms of what children and teachers are telling us. And I think that in a city like London, that's something that's incredibly important. And certainly I'm very, very aware of that at the moment as we're trying to kind of piece together what we do post-COVID, or, well, not really post-COVID, but as it unfolds, is working out how we continue to make that environment available to children at a point when them and their families are very, very nervous.
Jemima, in your written interview, you spoke about how cutting down or stopping eating meat is beneficial to the ocean and environment overall. Can you expand on this, please?
Yeah, so alongside my studies, I've kind of started to realise that actually I can make this kind of change in my life to help protect the ocean. And although people might not really think that their eating meat has a direct effect, it's actually has quite a large influence on ocean health. So Britt's kind of already just chatted about this a bit, but climate change, so like animal agriculture is actually the biggest polluter of emissions over all the transport systems combined. And then not only that in terms of climate change, but you've also kind of got land degradation and clearing for space and water use and pollution that's all to do with agriculture. So in terms of kind of global warming, you've kind of got all these emissions that are coming out from agriculture, and they are contributing to global warming, and then this is actually warming the ocean. So then the ocean is kind of warming. You've got this thermal stress, which has given things like phenomenons like coral bleaching and the degradation of coral reefs and coral systems. And then you've also kind of got redistribution of species. So species are now starting to move northwards, away from hot areas in the equator. And then this is putting more stress on other fish species or other marine habitats like northwards. Because like Molly said as well, it's a whole interconnected system. So one area is having a big impact elsewhere. So yeah, just trying to I've decided to kind of make this change earlier this year to just be kind of more flexible, not entirely go teetotal, but just they're saying, like the UN has said that, you know, we've got until 2050, we need to not approach 2-degree increase. And to do that, the average person needs to eat 75% less beef, 90% less pork, and half the amount of eggs that they're eating. So if everyone is just kind of, you know, making changes here or there, they don't, you know, we're not telling everyone, like preaching the system, but yeah, just trying to get people to kind of understand that, you know, if it's more of a kind of once a week kind of thing, it will really help and people will notice a difference usually.
Our final panelist, Oliver. You're a passionate sailor and environmentalist. Tell us a bit more about the plastics that you've come across firsthand in the ocean and why you feel that people experiencing blue spaces firsthand is so important.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me. And it's fitting that I should go last because all rivers, as you said before, run to the sea, and plastic is no stranger to us out on the open ocean as well. I've been sailing in much more remote places, so I'm obviously very familiar with what's happening with London. It's, you know, it's my river, it's my city, and it carries a huge amount of waste to the sea, and we see that miles offshore. But it also varies a lot depending where you are. So here in the southeast, the coastlines, you know, you'll find a lot of domestic rubbish on the shoreline, but where we've been sailing up in the far north in the Western Isles in Scotland, most of what we find is fishing gear, and I mean that poses a direct hazard to us on the boat. It's got caught in our steering gear. What Simon was saying about getting it wrapped around the prop, this is thankfully, touch wood, not happened yet, but it's only a matter of time before we get a fishing net around the prop, and that's, you know, that's a problem. So it's the problem is with connection, isn't it? Most of us live far from the sea. We don't regularly go to the sea. We even less frequently go onto the sea. And it's very hard to therefore appreciate how your actions on land directly impact the marine ecosystem. So what I'm doing really is there's a lot of very common ground here with the previous speakers, is connecting people with the ocean, is giving them a personal insight into what a wonderful place the ocean is and how vital it is in practice for our survival on land. In fact, all surviving on land. So yes, we see an awful lot of plastic, even in the most remote places. We see the most surprising things. This includes like chocolate bar wrappers from 1984. That was a somewhat extraordinary find, but it just goes to show how long plastic hangs around in the environment, and in such a recognizable form. You know, it had a sell-by date on it, and it was clearly identified as a curly whirly or something I didn't even recognize. Not big on chocolates really, but the second part of your question is about appreciating how important it is to experience those blue spaces. And I think it's vital that we bring the oceans onto the land as part of our education system, as part of our culture, and as something which, you know, I mean, I'm trying to democratize sailing a little bit. It's a very privileged thing to be able to go out into the ocean on a yacht, but we're taking hundreds of people out, and it's a real privilege to be able to show them, you know, what an amazing place it is from a totally different perspective. And I think looking back at the land from the sea gives you a very different perspective on life as a whole, really. It makes you feel small, it makes you feel fragile, and it sort of, yeah, it makes that connection with the vastness of the ocean, and how even though it is, you know, really vast, we're still impacting it in really bad ways. So we have to make connection, and it's not just about learning about the ocean. You know, I think what was mentioned earlier about mental health is really interesting. The boat is almost, it's very different to your boat, Simon. It's much more of a wild thing out on the open sea, and you've got to work very closely together as a team to keep everyone safe, to keep the boat going, to make your landfalls, to work with the tides and the depths of the water and everything. So it brings people together in a really extraordinary way. And I'm using sailing as a catalyst for not just connecting with the ocean, but connecting people with each other, and trying to empower them to maintain that connection when they get back onto the land.
That's great. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you all for your answers. And I think a lot of you did touch on this, but I just wanted to open up a question to the panel as a whole. See if there's any recommendations for what we can all do to help blue spaces above what you've already touched on. You know, the blue spaces that animals and humans and existence relies on, really.
Anything we can do, is that so that's the question? Yeah.
So we, as in you, me, people watching this video who are looking to do one of the workshops. Yeah.
You know, I would say, you know, if people are interested, you know, maybe just kind of look and see, you know, what kinds of activities might be happening locally that you can get involved with, because especially in the last few years, sort of since that video Blue Planet was released, we at least noticed sort of this really big uptick in the number of people who wanted to get involved with us. And so there are actually a lot of groups similar to ours doing work like we do, and probably a whole host of activities like yours, Oliver. I mean, what you're doing and what we're doing are two very different kinds of things, but in a way they have sort of similar aims. So yeah, there's lots of different ways that people can get involved.
I'd just say, if you're looking like places to start, Thames 21 has a lot of events around London, so you could go on their website. And the Canal and River Trust sometimes have like wider activities around the country just as places to start.
I'd like to just echo what Molly said there. You know, go and get involved in a beach clean. It's really simple. There are loads of them now. Some really good community groups working, and we do it on a regular basis. And I'm always surprised by how people respond by picking something up they find on the beach every day and say, hey, look, I recognize this. You know, this is part of my life. I had one of these yesterday. And I think people assume that the plastic which ends up in the sea is not somehow their problem. It's something from far away. But when you see the thing you bought yesterday in the supermarket washed up on the shore, it makes, well, it hits it home really hard, doesn't it? I'm sure it's the same here in London on the river as it is in a remote island in Scotland. I think that's really important, yeah.
Yeah, I think just kind of echoing that, I feel like quite a few people kind of are waiting for a system change, and if maybe kind of people got a bit more conscious about little changes they can make here and there, that can actually make a massive difference. So things just simple as getting a hardy plastic water bottle or a reusable cup, and kind of not have those meal deals. Maybe, yeah, just kind of having less meat here or there. And then this will change the system if everyone is kind of backing that approach. So I think that is definitely something to take on board.
I mean, even in the last few years, the amount, the increase of vegetarian and vegan food options is, it's like, as someone who's been a vegetarian for 20 years, I'm now spoilt for choice. It's incredible.
I think
oh, go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, all I was going to say is kind of echoing the others in a way, but I think it's the interconnectedness of stuff that we really have to hammer home, because I think there's a sense sometimes that the small actions that we take won't add up to anything, and I think that's something particularly that the children feel, in a sense that they have to feel that they have some kind of agency over things. And I think by showing that the small changes that they make and that they can try and encourage their parents to make or the teachers to make, you can have a bearing on it. And I've been quite struck by how sharp children are on this now. And that's just something in the last 12 months where I've seen them on the boat a few times just call us out for things that we're doing, or call each other out for things that are in their lunch boxes. And I think that now's a moment to try and push that quite heavily.
Yeah, I agree with all of these recommendations as well. And I would only add that I would encourage people to go spend some time in nature and blue spaces, even if it's just like the pond in your local park or something, or along the River Thames, and maybe go visit your local aquarium as well, to learn a bit more about the sea and how it's related to the Thames, and also if you learn new things, or if you're adopting some little changes in your life, to tell other people about that as well and share your knowledge.
Yeah, we're all quite privileged people to work with the sea or to work with aquatic spaces. I think we need to realize that, and we need to play our part as advocates for the oceans or for blue spaces in general. That's something we can do very easily. And it's great to see the projects which come out of that. Just around this virtual table, there's a huge amount of positivity, and that's great to see.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Thank you, for your time and for your insights. And I'd just like to say to everyone who's listened to our talk, I hope you found it helpful. We'd love to see you at Chisenhale Studios for some of the physical events. So that will be Friday the 11th of September from 5 till 8. Some of the panel will be there. It's Chisenhale Studios near Mile End, from 5 to 8. So you can come and have a chat to us about what we've touched on. Then on Saturday the 12th of September, so the following day, we'll meet at Chisenhale for a towpath clean led by the Lower Regents Coalition. That will be from 11 to 2. Then on Sunday the 13th, I'll be leading Humans Make Plastic workshops on Zoom. You need to sign up for all of these events. You can do that on my website, which is www.camillabrendon.com/new-events. And they're also viewable on www.totallythames.org. And don't forget to tag me in at Camilla Brendon and #HumansMakePlastic and #Camilla Brendon. All right, thanks everyone.